Pam Bondi walked into the Senate hearing room that day, carrying a briefcase full of talking points about integrity in public service, which is a lot like an arsonist showing up to a fire safety seminar with matches in their pocket. Picture this: former Florida Attorney General, Trump's most loyal defender, sitting across from Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, who just happened to bring a little gift, a folder, not a thick one, just 27 pages. But these 27 pages contained every check, every email, every moment Bondi sold out Florida families for a little campaign cash and a lot of Mar-a-Lago invitations. Bondi thought this would be routine. Show up, give rehearsed answers about serving the people, maybe toss in a few jabs at Democrats, and walk out in time for her Fox News hit. She had no idea she was about to become a case study in what happens when your entire career is built on transactions, and somebody finally asks for receipts. What you're about to hear is 3 hours of political theater that broke the internet. 42 million views in the first day. If you've ever wondered what justice sounds like when it's delivered with a Texas accent and a stack of evidence, stay with me. The Senate Judiciary Committee hearing room was packed. C-SPAN cameras were rolling. Pam Bondi sat at the witness table, flanked by 2 lawyers who looked like they billed $800 an hour. She wore an '80s suit, a pearl necklace, that perfectly styled blonde hair, the whole serious public servant costume. Jasmine Crockett sat on the dais, a thin folder in front of her. She adjusted her microphone and smiled. Not a warm smile, a professional one. The kind of smile that says, "I know something you don't want me to know." "Madam Bondi, thank you for joining us today," Crockett began, her voice smooth. "I want to start with something simple, something we can all agree on. As Attorney General of Florida, you took an oath to serve the people, not special interests. Is that correct?" Bondi leaned into her microphone, confident. She'd done this 1,000 times. "Absolutely, Congresswoman. My entire career has been dedicated to fighting for Florida families." "Wonderful," Crockett said, her smile widening just a fraction. "I'm so glad to hear that, because I want to talk about a very specific Florida family. Actually, several thousand Florida families. The ones who lost money to Trump University." Bondi's expression didn't change, but her shoulders stiffened slightly. "We reviewed the matter extensively." "Oh, I know you reviewed it," Crockett cut in smoothly, still maintaining that professional tone. "In fact, let's talk about when you reviewed it and what was happening in your bank account at exactly the same time." She opened her folder. The camera zoomed in. September 13th. 2013, Crockett looking at a document. "Your office receives complaints about Trump University from Florida residents. Patricia and Michael Chen from Tampa. They lost $35,000. Robert Martinez from Miami, $26,000. These are real people, Madam Bondi. Your constituents." Bondi nodded. "Yes, and we took all complaints seriously." September 14th. 2013, Crockett continued, pulling out another page. "The very next day, your Deputy Attorney General, a career prosecutor, not a political appointee, writes an internal memo. Listen to this. Sufficient evidence of fraud. Recommend joining New York. Led multi-state action." That's your own staff telling you there's a case. The room was quiet. Journalists in the gallery were typing. September 17th. 2013, Crockett said, her voice sharpening just slightly. 4 days after the complaints, the Trump Foundation cuts a check for $25,000 to And Justice for All, your re-election committee. She held up a copy of the check, blown up large enough for the cameras. There it was. Trump Foundation, $25,000, paid to the order of Pam Bondi's campaign. And then, September 22nd, 2013, 5 days after the check, your office announces after thorough review insufficient evidence to proceed. Crockett looked up from her documents directly at Bondi. "So let me get this straight, Madame Bondi. Monday, your staff says investigate. Tuesday, Trump sends money. Friday, you say never mind." She let that hang in the air for a moment. That's not a thorough review. That's a 5-day auction. Bondi leaned forward, trying to take control. Congresswoman, the timing was purely coincidental. We make prosecutorial decisions based on evidence, not. Let's talk about evidence. Crockett's voice rose slightly. Just enough. New York's Attorney General had the same evidence you did. The exact same complaints, the exact same fraudulent marketing materials, the exact same fake university that was really just expensive sales seminars. She pulled out more documents. New York sued. They won. They recovered $25 million for victims. Texas joined that lawsuit. So did California. So did Massachusetts. 33 states total joined the action against Trump University. Crockett paused, looking at Bondi. Florida, your state, with some of the most victims. 152 documented complaints got nothing. Zero. Because you took a $25,000 campaign check and looked the other way. That's not, Bondi started. And here's my favorite part. Madam Bondi, Crockett wasn't done. That check from the Trump Foundation, it was illegal. The Trump Foundation was a charity. Charities can't make political donations. It's against federal law. So Trump broke the law to pay you, and you rewarded him by not investigating his fraud scheme. Crockett leaned back in her chair, letting that sink in. That's not public service. That's a protection racket with a receipt. Bondi's face was getting red now. These are gross distortions of. Let's talk about the math, Crockett said, cutting her off again. $25,000, Madam Bondi. That's what it cost to buy Florida's Attorney General. Not a lot when you think about it. I've seen used cars cost more. But for Florida families, Patricia Chen had to declare bankruptcy. Her retirement savings gone. Robert Martinez, the man from Miami, had to take out a reverse mortgage on his house at 72 years old to cover the money he lost. Hundreds of families, your constituents, got screwed. Crockett's voice was sharp now, prosecutorial, and you looked the other way for the price of a mid-range sedan. She pulled out one more document. Every other attorney general who investigated got justice for their people. New York, Texas, California, they fought for their residents, but not Florida, because Florida's AG was too busy cashing checks. You know what we call that where I'm from, Madam Bondi? We call that bought. Bondi tried to respond, her voice defensive. I exercised prosecutorial discretion based on. Based on who paid you, Crockett said flatly. You stood up at press conferences talking about protecting Florida families from scams. You were the chief law enforcement officer of the state, and when thousands of your own people got scammed, provably, documentably, obviously scammed, you chose a campaign check over your oath. Crockett gathered her papers, looking directly at the camera. Madam Bondi, you didn't serve Florida families. You served yourself, and the only person who got justice in this story was Donald Trump, because he got exactly what he paid for. Bondi grabbed her water glass. Her hand was shaking slightly. Madam Bondi, Crockett began again, her tone shifting to something almost conversational. I want to talk about something more pleasant now. Your social life. Specifically, your friendship with Donald Trump. Bondi relaxed slightly, back on familiar ground. I've known the president for many years. Yes, he's been a friend. And how nice, Crockett interrupted brightly. And you visited Mar-a-Lago quite a bit, haven't you? Beautiful place, I hear. Never been invited myself. Shocking, I know. A ripple of laughter went through the gallery. In fact, Crockett continued, pulling out a new document, between 2013 and 2016, while you were still Attorney General. Mind you, you visited Mar-a-Lago 17 times. That we know from the logged visits, anyway. Bondi shifted in her seat. I fail to see how personal friendships are relevant too. Oh, we'll get to how relevant it is, Crockett said, that sharp edge creeping back. Because here's the thing about Mar-a-Lago. It costs money to get in there. Membership fees, event fees. It's not exactly a public park. She leaned forward. And I'm curious, as Florida's Attorney General, making a public salary of $128,972 a year, How exactly were you affording a lifestyle that includes regular trips to a club that costs six figures to join? Bondi opened her mouth, but Crockett was already pulling out more papers. Let me show you something interesting. These are guest logs from Mar-a-Lago, public records, because Trump liked to brag about his events. Here's you at the New Year's Eve Gala, 2014. Ticket price, $1,000 per person. Here's you at Trump's birthday party that same year. Here is you at a fundraising dinner, $2,000 a plate. Crockett spread the documents out. 17 documented visits, multiple luxury events, and that doesn't count the times you were there for private occasions that didn't make the official logs. But wait, Crockett said, her voice taking on a more curious tone. It gets more interesting, because you weren't flying Southwest to get there, were you? She pulled out travel records. 8 of those trips, 8 you flew on private jets, not commercial, private. You know what private jet travel from Tampa to Palm Beach costs? About $15,000 round trip. Bondi tried to cut in. Those were provided by who? Crockett asked sharply. By Trump? By his associates? Because if someone's flying you private, and you're the Attorney General not investigating their business, that's not generosity, that's a transaction. She pulled out photos now printed large, held up for the cameras. Here you are at Mar-a-Lago, wearing what my staff tells me is a Carolina Herrera gown. Retail price, $4,000. Here's you at another event, different designer dress, estimated $3,000. Here's you with what appears to be a new Cartier bracelet. Crockett paused. Now, I'm not a fashion expert, but I do know math. Your salary is $129,000. Your disclosed assets show no significant wealth. So where is this money coming from? Bondi's lawyer leaned in, whispering. Bondi nodded and spoke carefully. I've always been careful with my finances. I made wise investments. Investments? Crockett interrupted. Or compensation. She pulled out a thick document. Because here's what I found. These are records from political consulting work you did while still serving as Attorney General. Between 2014 and 2016, you received $340,000 in consulting fees from various Republican organizations and PCs. The room erupted in murmurs. Bondi's face went pale. Now, Florida law says you can't have outside employment as a D without ethics approval, Crockett continued. Did you get that approval? Silence, Madam Bondi. Did you get ethics approval for $340,000 in outside income? Bondi stammered. Those were reimbursements for speaking. $340,000 in speaking fees? Crockett's eyebrows shot up. While you were Attorney General, that's not speaking fees. That's money laundering with a podium. She spread out more documents. And look at who paid those fees. Trump Victory Fund PC, $85,000. Make America Great Again Committee, $120,000. America First Policies, $135,000. Crockett looked up. Every single check connected to Trump organizations. So you're the Attorney General who decided not to investigate Trump University fraud. Trump pays you directly illegally through his foundation. Then Trump's network pays you another $340,000 in consulting fees. And then you spend the next 3 years as his personal guest at Mar-a-Lago, flying private, wearing designer clothes, living large. She let that timeline sit there. That's not friendship, Madam Bondi. That's a business relationship, and the business was protecting Trump. Crockett stood up now, papers in hand. Let me paint you a picture, because I want people listening to really understand this. Month 1, Trump pays you $25,000. Month 2, you kill the investigation. Month 6, first Mar-a-Lago visit log. Year 2, $340,000 in consulting fees from Trump Network. Year 3, 17 Mar-a-Lago visits. Year 4, you leave office and immediately join Trump's impeachment defense team. She pointed at Bondi. At what point does this stop being friendship and start being payment for services rendered? Bondi tried to stand, angry now. This is outrageous speculation. Is it speculation that Trump paid you? Crockett's voice rose. No, That's documented. Is it speculation that you killed his investigation? No, that happened. Is it speculation that you visited Mar-a-Lago 17 times? No, sign-in sheets. Is it speculation that you got $340,000 from Trump-connected groups? No, your financial disclosures. The only speculation here is whether you have any shame, and based on the evidence, I am thinking now. Crockett sat back down, gathering her papers calmly, while Bondi remained standing, face red, trembling slightly with rage or fear or both. You were supposed to be Florida's top cop, Crockett said quietly. Instead, you became Trump's most expensive employee, and Florida families, the ones you swore to protect, that paid the price while you collected checks and sipped champagne at Mar-a-Lago. Madam Bondi, Crockett said, her voice taking on an almost admiring, theatrical tone. I have to say your career trajectory after leaving office is impressive. Very impressive. Bondi looked wary. You went from public servant to, well, let's see. Crockett pretended to count on her fingers. Lobbyist, foreign agent, political consultant, Fox News contributor. All in about 6 months. She looked up, eyes wide with mock amazement. That's efficiency. Most people take years to completely sell out. You did it in half a year. I joined the private sector. Like many former officials, Bondi started defensive. Oh, you didn't join the private sector, Crockett interrupted. You became the private sector. There's a difference. She pulled out a new timeline. Let me walk through this, because the speed is actually remarkable. January 3rd, 2019. Last day as Florida Attorney General. You give a farewell speech about public service, about fighting for families, about integrity. Very moving. January 15th, 2019. 12 days later, you're registered as a lobbyist of Ballard Partners, one of the most powerful lobbying firms in D.C. February 2019. 1 month after leaving office, you register as a foreign agent for Qatar. Contract value, $115,000 for 6 months of work. March 2019. You joined Trump's legal defense team for his impeachment. April 2019. Fox News contributor contract. Estimated value, $200,000 a year. Crockett looked up. Madam Bondi, you went from serving the public to serving the highest bidder faster than most people update their LinkedIn profile. Bondi's jaw was tight. Foreign agent registration is perfectly legal. Oh, I know it's legal, Crockett said. So is selling knockoff purses on a street corner. But neither is what we expect from someone who just spent 8 years as the state's chief law enforcement officer. She pulled out more documents. Let's talk about Qatar specifically. This is interesting. In 2017, while you were still AG, the Trump administration supported Saudi Arabia's blockade against Qatar. Qatar was essentially isolated, economically strangled. They desperately needed that blockade lifted. And who did Qatar hire to help change American policy? Crockett paused for effect. You. Well, technically, they hired Ballard Partners, but you were the rainmaker. $115,000 for 6 months. So let me ask, when Qatar hired you in February 2019, did they hire you for your legal expertise, your deep knowledge of Middle Eastern policy? She paused. Or did they hire you because you had Donald Trump's personal cell phone number? They hired you for access. That's what you sold. Access to Trump, access to the White House, access to policymakers. You're not a consultant. You're a doorman with a law degree. But Qatar was just the beginning, Crockett continued, pulling out another document. Let's look at your other clients in that first year after leaving office. She read from the list. Medical marijuana companies, the same industry you fought against as AG, $95,000. Private prison corporation, while Florida's prisons were under investigation for abuse, $140,000. Pharmaceutical industry group during the opioid crisis, $200,000. She looked up. Madam Bondi, you took money from every industry you were supposed to be regulating. You didn't join the private sector. You auctioned yourself to the highest bidders. Let's add this up, Crockett said, pulling out a calculator for theatrical effect. In your first 18 months after leaving office, Ballard Partners base salary, $500,000. Qatar contract, $115,000. Various consulting fees, $360,000. Fox News estimated, $200,000. Speaking fees, $180,000. Other lobbying clients, $635,000. She looked up. Total, $1.99 million. Nearly $2 million in 18 months. Your OG salary was $129,000 a year. You spent 8 years in that job, total earnings about $1 million. You made double that in a year and a half by selling access to everything you learned and everyone you met in public service. The room was silent except for the sound of journalists typing. Here's what really happened, Madam Bondi. Crockett leaned forward. You spent 8 years building relationships with Trump, with Republican power players, with industries you were supposed to be regulating. You built those relationships on the public dime, using the authority of your office, and then you immediately cashed in. Every contact, every relationship, every piece of insider knowledge, you sold it all. She stood up again, her voice taking on a harder edge. You came in here talking about serving the people, but you didn't serve the people. You used them, used the office, used the authority, built your Rolodex, and the moment you could legally cash out, you sold everything you learned to the highest bidder. Bondi tried to respond. I followed all disclosure requirements. Following disclosure requirements isn't integrity. Crockett shot back. It's the bare minimum to stay out of jail. You didn't break the law? Congratulations. But you broke the public trust. And in some ways that's worse. She gathered her papers. Because at least criminals know they're criminals. You think you're respectable. You think this is just how things work. And that's the most depressing part of all. Crockett's tone changed. Less prosecutorial sarcasm. More quiet intensity. Madame Bondi, I want to talk about February 26th, 2012. Do you remember what happened that day? Bondi looked confused, wary. You'll have to be more specific. Trayvon Martin was killed in Sanford, Florida, Crockett said quietly. He was 17 years old. He was your constituent. And he was killed under Florida's Stand Your Ground law you vigorously defended. The room went completely silent. This was different. This was personal. Now I bring this up, Crockett continued, not to relitigate that specific case. I bring it up because of what happened after. Because your response to Trayvon Martin's death tells us everything we need to know about who you actually served as Attorney General. She pulled out new documents. After Trayvon Martin was killed, there was massive public pressure to review Stand Your Ground. Civil rights groups, legal experts, families of victims, even some Florida Republicans said, maybe we should look at whether this law was working as intended. You know what you did? Crockett looked at Bondi. You said no. You didn't just decline to review it. You went on national television defending Stand Your Ground. You called the critics outside agitators. You said the law was essential to protecting Florida families. She pulled out a petition. After Trayvon Martin's death, you received 14,000 petitions from Florida residents asking you, begging you to review Stand Your Ground. 14,000. Madam Bondi, that's not a fringe group. Those are your constituents. You said no. Civil rights organizations offered to work with your office on a comprehensive review, free of charge, just to look at the data, see if changes were needed. You said no. Members of your own party, Florida Republicans, suggested maybe we should examine this law. You said no. Crockett paused. Why? She didn't wait for an answer. She pulled out campaign finance records. Let's look at your campaign donations from 2012 to 2014, the 2 years after Trayvon Martin's death. NRA Political Victory Fund, $42,000. Unified Sportsmen of Florida, $28,000. Florida Carry Petsy, $35,000. Gun Owners of America, $18,000. Total from the gun lobby, $123,000. Crockett let that number hang there. So, the 17-year-old kid dies under a controversial law. Thousands of your constituents beg for review. Civil rights groups offer help. Some of your own party members ask questions, and you not only refuse, you go on Fox News and defend the law. You attack the critics. You say stand your ground as perfect as is. And during those same 2 years, the gun lobby gives you $123,000. Bondi tried to speak. My position on stand your ground was based on my belief in self-defense rights. Your position on stand your ground, Crockett interrupted, her voice sharp, was based on who was paying you. Just like Trump University. Just like everything else. She pulled out another document. Let me tell you about another case from your time as AD. In 2015, a wealthy real estate developer in Miami was accused of fraud. Your office investigated within 2 weeks. You held a press conference. You called it a threat to Florida families. You pursued it aggressively. That developer had defrauded people of about $3 million total. Serious crime, don't get me wrong, but you moved fast. Crockett looked at Bondi. Trump University defrauded Florida residents of over $10 million. You did nothing. Why? Because Trump gave you $25,000. Trayvon Martin, that child died. Thousands of Floridians asked you to review the law. You did nothing. Why? Because the gun lobby gave you $123,000. Her voice rose. Do you see the pattern here, Madam Bondi? When crimes are committed by people who don't donate to you, you're all about justice press conferences, aggressive prosecution, protecting Florida families. But when crimes are committed or kids die because of people or industries that do donate to you, suddenly you're too busy. Suddenly it's complex. Suddenly there are limited resources. Crockett stood up, looking directly at Bondi. So here's my question, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. What does justice cost in Florida? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like justice is whatever you can afford to pay Pam Bondi's campaign account. She didn't wait for an answer. She just looked at Bondi. 10 seconds of silence. Bondi opened her mouth, closed it, looked at her lawyer. Nothing. Crockett's voice dropped. Quieter but more intense. You know what's heartbreaking about this? Trayvon Martin's mother had to sit in courtrooms and watch her son's character be attacked. She had to listen to people justify why a grown man stalked and killed her teenage son. She had to watch as Florida's top law enforcement officer, you went on TV and defended the law that got her son killed. And why? Not because you studied the law and found it just. Not because you consulted with civil rights experts and decided no changes were needed. But because the NRA cut you a check. Crockett's voice was steady, but the emotion was clear. You didn't serve justice, Madame Bondi. You served donors, and Trayvon Martin's family. Along with thousands of other Florida families, they paid the price for your fundraising. Bondi's eyes were glistening. She looked down at the table, unable to meet Crockett's gaze. The gallery was completely silent. Even the journalists had stopped typing. Madame Bondi, Crockett said, her voice almost gentle. Almost. I want to give you an opportunity. One chance to show that somewhere in all of this, there was a moment, just one moment, where you put the people of Florida ahead of your own interests. Bondi looked up confused. Can you think of one? Crockett asked. A long pause. One decision, Crockett continued, where you had to choose between doing the right thing and taking the money, and you chose right. Can you think of even one example? Bondi opened her mouth, closed it, looked at her lawyers. They had nothing. My entire career was dedicated to. I'll wait, Crockett said, cutting her off. The silence stretched. 20 seconds. 30. Bondi looked desperate, searching her memory for anything she could point to. The cameras captured every second. Finally, Crockett spoke. No, nothing. Not one example of putting people over payment. She pulled out one final document, thinner than the others. Okay, then let me show you what your career actually looks like when you put all the pieces together. This is a summary my staff put together. It shows every major decision you made as AD, cross-referenced with campaign donations received within 6 months of that decision. She began walking through it, speaking clearly. Category 1. Trump-related decisions. You declined to investigate Trump University after receiving $25,000 $5,000 from Trump Foundation, plus $340,000 in consulting fees from Trump-connected groups. Result: Trump protected. Florida victims got nothing. Category 2. Stand your ground. You refused to review the law after Trayvon Martin's death. In the following 2 years, you received $123,000 from the gun lobby. Result: law unchanged. More deaths followed. Category 3. Opioid crisis. You had slow response to pill mills, selective enforcement. During that same period, $89,000 from pharmaceutical industry groups. Result: Florida became an epicenter of the epidemic. Category 4. Environmental enforcement. You declined to join multi-state actions against corporations polluting the Everglades. During that period, $67,000 from agricultural interests. Result: Everglades suffered continued damage. Category 5. Consumer protection. You declined to join several multi-state consumer protection lawsuits. During that period, $156,000 from business lobbying groups. Result: Florida consumers lost protections other states had. Crockett looked up from the document. This isn't about 1 or 2 questionable decisions, Madam Bondi. This is about a pattern, a systematic pattern, where your official actions aligned almost perfectly with whoever was funding your campaigns. She pulled out another page. My staff ran the numbers. During your 8 years as AD, you received campaign donations from 237 different organizations. You made prosecutorial decisions on matters involving 94 of those donors. In 89 cases, 9 out of 94, your decision benefited the donor. Crockett let that sink in. That's a 95% correlation. In social science, anything above 90% is considered proof of causation. You know what that means. It means your donors weren't supporting you because they liked your policies. It means they were buying your policies. Bondi was shaking her head, but she had no words. And just when you think it can't get worse, Crockett said, her voice darkening, we found these. She held up new documents, printed emails. These are communications between you and your campaign staff. We got them through a records request from a former staffer who decided to grow a conscience. The room leaned forward. Crockett email from you to your campaign manager, July 2014. Before I make a decision on the environmental case, check who donated and how much. Don't want to upset major donors. Cast from the gallery. Another one, October 2015. Tell the pharma lobbyists we're not moving forward with the enforcement action. Make sure they remember this at the next fundraiser. And my personal favorite, Crockett said, her voice dripping with contempt. March 2016. I need $100,000 for the campaign by end of quarter. See which pending cases involve deep pockets who might want favorable treatment. The room erupted. Shouts, a reporter yelling questions, the chairman's gavel coming down hard. When order was restored, Crockett continued, her voice steady and damning. Madam Bondi, you didn't just take a bribe here and there. You systematized corruption. You turned the Florida Attorney General's office into a fee-for-service operation. Want justice? Pay out. Want a pass? Pay out. Want favorable treatment? Pay out. She stood now, papers in hand, voice rising. And while you were building your little empire, real people suffered. Trump University victims never got justice. Trayvon Martin's family never got a review. Opioid victims watched pills flood their communities while you cashed pharma checks. Environmental destruction continued while you took agriculture money. You took an oath, Crockett said, her voice sharp as a blade. You swore to serve the people of Florida, and you betrayed them. Every single time your personal interest conflicted with your duty, you chose yourself. Not once, not twice, 94 times. Bondi tried to stand, her lawyer pulling her back down, but Crockett wasn't done. And the worst part? You're not even sorry. You're sitting there trying to justify it, calling it normal politics for how things work. You've convinced yourself that selling out is acceptable because everyone does it. Crockett's voice dropped, became more dangerous. But here's what should terrify every American listening to this. You're right. Everyone does do it. You're not unique, Madam Bondi. You're just sloppy. You're what happens when the corruption gets so normalized that people stop even hiding it. You're a symptom of a diseased system, a system where public office is just the first step in a career plan that ends with lobbying contracts and Fox News gigs, where public service means serving yourself to as much public money and access as you can grab. She walked closer to the witness table, looking directly at Bondi. You asked earlier why I'm doing this, why I'm attacking you, why I won't just move on and let you enjoy your lobbying career in TV appearances. Here's why. Because you should be held accountable. Because someone needs to stand up and say, this is not okay. Because every kid in America deserves to know that public service means something more than building a resume for your next gig. Crockett's voice rose to its full power. You sold Florida piece by piece. Decision by decision, you auctioned off justice to the highest bidder. And you did it with a smile, wrapped in flag pins and tough-on-crime rhetoric. Well, today the bill comes due. She gathered her papers with finality. This testimony, these documents, these emails, all of it is being referred to the Florida Bar for ethics review, to the Department of Justice for potential corruption charges, and to every news outlet that will cover it. You got away with it for 8 years. You cashed in for 2 more years. But today, the receipts caught up. Bondi stood abruptly, papers scattering from the table. Her voice cracked when she spoke. This is a partisan witch hunt. No, Madam Bondi, Crockett said calmly, sitting back down. This is accountability. There's a difference. Bondi turned and walked toward the door, her lawyers scrambling to follow. The cameras tracked her every step. The slumped shoulders, the papers clutched to her chest, the complete absence of the confidence she'd had walking in. In the hallway, reporters swarmed. Questions came from every direction. Bondi pushed through without speaking, her face a mask barely holding together. Someone shouted, "Do you regret taking Trump's money?" Bondi flinched like she'd been slapped, but kept walking. Back in the hearing room, Crockett turned to the C-SPAN camera for a closing statement. What you just heard wasn't about Republican versus Democrat. This was about right and wrong. About whether we're going to accept a system where public officials treat their office like a personal ATM, or whether we're going to demand better. Pam Bondi isn't unique. She's just the one who got caught today. There are hundreds more just like her at state houses, in Congress, in every level of government. People who talk about service while serving themselves. Her voice was steady, clear. The question is, are we going to keep accepting it? Or are we going to start demanding that public service actually serve the public? The choice is ours. The hearing ended at 4:47 p.m. By 5:30 p.m. the video had 500,000 views. By midnight, 12 million. Within 48 hours, 42 million views across all platforms. Bondi Exposed trended #1 globally for 2 straight days. But the real destruction wasn't online. It was personal, immediate, and brutal. Bondi walked out of that hearing into a media firestorm. Within an hour, Fox News called not her producer, but a vice president. The conversation lasted 3 minutes. By the end, her contributor contract was terminated. By mutual agreement, the statement read, translation, "You're radioactive." Ballard Partners was next. An email. Emergency partners meeting scheduled. Your presence not required. By the next morning, her office was being cleared out. The formal termination letter arrived by courier that afternoon. Her 3 major consulting clients sent termination notices within 48 hours. One just said, contract terminated per clause 7.3. Qatar's payment simply stopped. Followed days later by a 1-page termination letter. The Florida Bar sent notice via certified mail. A formal ethics investigation opened. Her lawyer's statement to the press, Ms. Bondi welcomes the opportunity to clear her name, fell on deaf ears. The victims started appearing on TV. Patricia Chen, the grandmother who lost $35,000 to Trump University, cried on CNN. Now I know why she didn't help us. Trump paid her not to. The Department of Justice released a one-sentence statement. The department is reviewing materials related to potential violations of federal law. That meant a formal review was underway. Honest services fraud carries up to 20 years. Former staffers started talking anonymously to the Washington Post. She told us directly, always check the donor list before making major decisions. Bondi couldn't show up anywhere. She was asked to leave her favorite Tampa restaurant. She was turned away at a Republican fundraiser. Old social media photos of her at Mar-a-Lago were flooded with comments. How much did this photo cost Florida families? Sabrina Fulton, Trayvon Martin's mother, was asked about Bondi on MSNBC. Her answer, delivered with quiet dignity, was devastating. I prayed for years that someone would hold her accountable. God answered my prayers through Representative Crockett. The financial pressure was crushing. Her income dropped to zero, but her legal and PR costs ran over $100,000 a month. She sold her Tampa condo at a 15% loss. Her marriage collapsed. Her husband filed for separation, telling friends, I can't be associated with this anymore. Bondi went into hiding, living in a small rental in suburban Tampa. Her law license remains under investigation, a process that could take 2 years. Who would hire her? She tried to write a memoir. Every major publisher passed. She self-published that sold 247 copies in the first month. The top review bought this as a joke. The delusion is spectacular. Trump, when asked about her by a reporter, shrugged. Pam who? I know a lot of Pams. She is sometimes spotted at a local Starbucks, sitting alone in a corner with a laptop. A barista told a reporter,